are here in Senegal under the invitation of His Excellency Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko to bring some experts together to discuss Senegal's debt problem in order to find two types of solutions. One set of solutions that are urgent, that can solve the problem as quickly as possible, and that means being able to free up budgetary resources for the government of Senegal to be able to spend on education, healthcare, and development generally. The second is to discuss the type of solutions that can bring about more long-term debt sustainability, meaning how Senegal can grow and develop without being dependent on external debt, especially debt that is financed by foreign exchange. When debt is financed by foreign exchange, it creates two costs. One cost is to mobilize local currency, like the CFA franc, but once you have mobilized the local currency, you still have to find the foreign exchange. So you tax the people, one cost, and then you have to pay for foreign exchange, two costs. So a sustainable solution for financing development must be one that reduces the tendency, the pressure, the approach by governments to be borrowing in foreign currency. So those are the type of solutions we are looking for. What do we do with the argument at the moment about the role of the IMF? Should the government go to the IMF or not go to the IMF? This is a major discussion in the conference. If the government goes to the IMF, what is going to be both the short-term and long-term impact on development of Senegal? If they don't go to the IMF, do we have alternative solutions? Secondly, should they restructure the debt, especially debt that is owed by private financial institutions and entities, including bonds, euro bonds, for example? If they don't structure the debt, can there be a strategy for reducing the Eurobond debt? That's the second argument. The third argument, is it a good thing for the government to default on their debt, or is it a bad thing? If they default on their debt, what is likely to be the impact? But if they don't default on their debt and continue to use all of the savings to pay the debt, what is likely to be the impact? So what is the balance of impacts in these two ways? Default, not default. If you default, there is a cost, a consequence. One consequence is that the government may not be able to go back to Eurobond market. But if that is the case, is that necessarily a bad thing? So the one thing that Ndongo was making is that countries that do not have sufficient foreign exchange, it may actually be a good thing to save the revenue that comes from buying foreign exchange to reinvest it in economic growth. It's the same thing that Professor Jeffrey Sachs said in his statement, that actually a country at the stage of development as Senegal should not be paying debts. They should be putting all that money into growing the economy and industrializing the economy. In order to default with limited consequences internationally, the government of Senegal needs support from the international community. This is why the conference here also brings people who can help to tell the government of Senegal's story and become part of the public support and they create the public sentiment abroad, whether it's in France, it's in Europe, it's the United States, or a collective position of Africans, to be able to support a bold position by the government of Senegal. If the government of Senegal chooses to approach its debt problem by defaulting, by not agreeing, making an agreement with the IMF, and by taking an alternative path. So let me conclude. We are here to do three things: analyze the situation and learn some more, propose alternative solutions that address the short-term as well as the long-term, and build international solidarity in support of the government of Senegal. So there are two potential impacts. If you default, you save money. You put that money in development, and the economy grows. So defaulting is not necessarily bad. So in the case of Ghana, it defaulted, but it took a long time before it started paying. And what happened when it went into the IMF agreement? They had to go into serious austerity. The government could not finance Agenda 111, healthcare. Government could not invest in infrastructure. So Ghana basically stagnated for 3 years. That is 3 years of lost development. If they had put that money into infrastructure rather than austerity, if they had put the money in health and education, Ghana would have grown faster. Now, what happened when Ghana then went into the IMF? When it went into the IMF, it still did not find the money to pay the debt. So to date, Ghana has still defaulted. The only difference is this: Ghana used its gold. It created a gold board. Senegal has gas. Senegal has gold. Not as much as Ghana, but it does. So what did Ghana do? Ghana used its gold board to buy gold, build up its reserves, sell some, and pay some of the debt. Not from the IMF agreement, but from a position and a policy which the IMF did not support, but which worked. So every country is different. The problem with Senegal, which is different from Ghana, is that Senegal does not have its own central bank and does not have its own currency. How did the gold board get money to buy gold? The central bank advanced money to the gold board. They did not borrow it. They just used advanced Ghana cedis to the gold board to buy the gold in Ghana cedis and store the gold. Senegal doesn't have that option. But Senegal is a member of the West African Monetary Union. It has to mobilize the rest of the West African Monetary Union to put pressure on the Bank of the West African Monetary Union to support countries to adjust with that austerity. That's an option. The only way to stop governments hiding debt is to do a law that forces government to publish every loan that they contract. And that when they publish it, so in the public domain. So at the moment, the government of Senegal needs to create a commission to audit it. So everybody knows what is it that was hidden legitimately, like it is in the public companies which was not declared, and what was hidden illegitimately, which is corruptly. But then the next step is to have a law that requires every debt that is contracted to be published. But the third is that civil society, the population, must ask questions of their parliament. They have to, after elections, the population cannot sit and wait for their parliamentarians to act for them. They have to continuously put pressure on their government. Transparency, constant public engagement, and a legal approach, pass the law to make sure that every debt that is contracted, whether it is local or international, be publicly published, which is available to the public. Make it transparent.